Small business owners in Kansas City are facing huge rent increases due to a property tax increase of more than 600% in some cases. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting story for you today, and it's coming out of my hometown of Kansas City, and it has to do with property taxes. So I sold all my properties in Jackson County, Missouri just last year because, you know what, I was losing money, and part of it had to do with inflation, okay? The property taxes were going up every year, the insurance, all my costs were going up, and my interest rate was super high, and I was just bleeding money. So I'm glad I sold, but the issue of the property taxes for the people who still own properties there, well, it's a big one, okay? It's a big problem. So I read this article and I knew exactly how this business owner felt. So this business owner, he saw a huge amount of rent increase for the next year because of the property taxes on the building that he's renting going up so much. In fact, according to the article, they went up 600%. Now, I don't understand how a commercial building that has been there for a while suddenly could see a 600% increase in the property taxes. I mean, that's insane. That is absolutely insane. And it shouldn't even be allowed, if you ask me. And the only thing you're going to do is drive people out of business. Okay? Not just that, but the property taxes went up for homeowners as well. And you're going to have people who can't afford the homes they live in anymore due to these increases. So what can be done about it? I don't know. And this is one of those topics where I understand the need to pay for things locally, right? But bleeding the homeowners and the business owners dry, it seems wrong, okay? So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. So what do you think the solution would be to these high property taxes, okay? Obviously, you know, we can look at the normal solutions such as cuts to services, cuts to the funding of programs, you know, like local property taxes a lot of the times pay for the schools. So any cuts that we put into place might be very detrimental to the local school districts. But, you know, I don't know if cutting alone is the solution or not. I mean, I guess it would have to be. You know, we're talking about, we just can't keep raising the taxes more and more and more. So, you know, we face the same issue here in Omaha, Nebraska. We have one of the highest tax rates in the entire country when it comes to property taxes, okay? And that's ridiculous. We're in Nebraska. The housing costs are low here. You know, it's not like we have a ton of social welfare programs out there, but, you know, I don't know. Maybe it's pension benefits. Maybe it's too many government employees. But whatever it is, we need to figure this out as soon as possible because, like I said, they're bleeding us dry. Anyway, let me get into the article and tell you what it says. This article is coming from kshb.com, and it says, "It was a shock. Renters and subtenants are worried about trickle-down impacts of property tax increases." And I think the article has more to do with this commercial business, but like I said, this applies to homeowners and businesses. Anyway, let's get into it. The deadline to appeal commercial property tax assessments in Jackson County was Monday. As small business owners made their cases online, several local tenants and vendors who rent spaces from property owners were stuck feeling anxious about the future. It was a shock, especially the amount being almost 600%, said Steve Waters, owner of All Keyed Up Piano Shop. "We're kind of emotional about it because it raised our monthly bills considerably." Waters notified by his landlord, Group Real Estate Development, on June 26th that he would have to pay $821 more in rent every month. Now, $821 a month. Now, he owns a piano shop. Now, I don't know what kind of profit margin we're talking about in terms of a piano shop. But I imagine that $821 a month is taking away a good amount of the profit, okay? And it's going to be quite noticeable. So, small business owner who, let's say he's just getting started, that could be enough to drown him, okay? That could be enough to put him out of business. Yet, politicians, the people putting these property tax increases in place, they don't think about that. They don't think about the fact that, hey, people will flee the city and head to somewhere where they can find lower taxes. They do this, okay? Especially in a place like Kansas City. Why do I say that? Because Kansas City, it sits on a state line. There's 2 states there. There's multiple counties. I mean, I'd probably say, let me think here. There's Jackson, there's Platte, there's Cass, there's Clay, and that's in Missouri. Those are the main counties. And then in Kansas, you have Wyandotte, you have Johnson, you have Leavenworth, and then there's a bunch of smaller counties if you want to drive even further. But basically, if you're being mistreated or you feel like your little jurisdiction is treating you wrong, then there's plenty of other places where you can live right there in the metro area. Okay, and most cities are built like this. That's why I say, like when I used to bring up the rent control in St. Paul, Minnesota, right? I was like, well, who cares if St. Paul has rent control? If I was an investor, I would just invest in a suburb of St. Paul, or I'd invest in Minneapolis, or I'd invest, because, it's a very large area. And Kansas City is the same way. So putting these high property taxes, if your property taxes are too high, that might mean that you just need to move a county over or move over across the state line. I think that the property taxes in Kansas are probably a little bit higher than the ones in Missouri, but move a county over, go to Clay County instead of Jackson. Okay, anyway, let me continue. His landlord is going through the appeals process, but the immediate impacts of the tax hike to Waters' rent add to the existing burden of inflation. The hardest part, though, was sitting down with 4 vendors who subleased from him and charging them 23% more for their rent. One of my vendors just had a child 2 months ago, Waters said. Bob Stout is one of those vendors. Stout operates Stout Piano Services from the building. He restores old player pianos and sells antiques. So, yeah, he has people subleasing from him. So just imagine, you have somebody paying $1,000 a month, right? And as a subleaser, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, we got to increase your rent by 23%. That's an additional $230 a month. Not easy to do when, like I said, this is the piano business. This is not a super high margin business. I mean, at least not that I'm aware of. Maybe somebody in the comments section could put how much of these piano businesses actually make. But, regardless, this is one of those issues that it impacts everybody. Business owners, it impacts homeowners, it impacts renters, it impacts every single person. Yet, we have this big bloated bureaucracy, and they just want to continue to just hit you with more taxes and take more of your money to pay for what? That's what the question is. Where can we cut? That's what my question is. Where can we make the cuts? Is it in ridiculous pension benefits? Is it in too many bureaucratic workers and too many departments and too large of a government? I don't know. Okay, is it spending on stupid projects? When I think about Kansas City, they just built this brand new multi-billion-dollar airport out there. And you're like, hey, and then next thing you know, you look, hey, my property taxes are shooting up 600%. What's the deal? Well, maybe it's that new airport, okay? But whatever it is, they need to figure this stuff out and make changes immediately. Otherwise, they're going to be driving businesses and people out of the city.